Have you ever noticed how the man who gives you less somehow occupies more space in your mind? He doesn't text consistently. He doesn't emotionally open up. Yet you feel drawn, intrigued, even obsessed. And then the man who is present, clear, emotionally available, he feels boring. This isn't coincidence. And it's not romance, it's psychology. Let's talk about why emotional absence gets mistaken for attraction and why it keeps so many women emotionally stuck. Emotional unavailability creates illusion, not intimacy, because what feels compelling in those dynamics is not closeness but ambiguity. When someone withholds emotional access, they leave behind empty spaces that the mind instinctively tries to fill. Human psychology is uncomfortable with gaps, especially emotional ones. So the imagination steps in and begins to construct meaning where none has been offered. The person is no longer being experienced as they are, but as who they might be if they were more present, more expressive, more available. This imagined version feels rich, complex, and deep, even though it is largely a projection. The illusion grows stronger precisely because there is so little real emotional material to work with, allowing fantasy to take over where connection is absent. Emotional unavailability often disguises itself as mystery, and mystery is frequently mistaken for depth. When someone is emotionally closed off, slow to respond, inconsistent, or vague, it creates a sense that there is something hidden beneath the surface. The mind interprets silence as substance and restraint, as emotional complexity. In reality, the lack of emotional expression is not a sign of inner richness, but of emotional limitation. Intimacy requires visibility, being seen, known, and emotionally engaged with, and emotional unavailability resists all three. What develops instead is a one-sided attachment where one person is emotionally invested and the other remains distant, reinforcing the illusion that there is something profound waiting to be uncovered. This illusion is further strengthened by the way emotional absence activates the nervous system. Inconsistent attention creates uncertainty, and uncertainty keeps the brain alert and searching for resolution. The emotional highs of brief connection, followed by withdrawal, intensify focus and attachment, making the experience feel charged and significant. That charge is often confused with emotional closeness when it is actually a stress response. Intimacy calms the nervous system. Illusion stimulates it. The body remains tense, scanning for signals, interpreting small gestures as meaningful breakthroughs, mistaking crumbs of attention for evidence of connection. Because emotional unavailability withholds reassurance, it shifts the focus away from mutual connection and towards self-evaluation. The question subtly changes from "do we connect" to "why am I not enough to receive more?" This internalization deepens the illusion by tying the other person's distance to personal worth. The effort invested in trying to gain emotional access creates a false sense of bond, as if persistence itself is proof of intimacy. In reality, intimacy does not need to be chased or extracted. It emerges through mutual openness and responsiveness. True intimacy is built through consistency, emotional presence, and the willingness to be affected by one another. It requires vulnerability, communication, and emotional risk from both sides. Emotional unavailability offers none of these, yet it can feel powerful because it invites longing rather than connection. The illusion thrives on anticipation, imagination, and unresolved tension, while intimacy thrives on shared reality. What feels intense in emotionally unavailable dynamics is not closeness, but the pull of what remains just out of reach. The nervous system confuses anxiety with chemistry because it is designed to respond to unpredictability as a signal that something important is happening. When emotional patterns are inconsistent, warmth followed by distance, attention followed by silence, the body does not interpret this as a lack of safety, but as heightened significance. The nervous system becomes alert, releasing stress hormones that increase focus, memory, and emotional intensity. This heightened state is often misread as attraction because it feels vivid and consuming. The body does not distinguish between excitement and anxiety as clearly as the mind believes it does. Both create arousal, urgency, and fixation, which can easily be labeled as romantic chemistry. When someone is emotionally unavailable, their inconsistency keeps the nervous system activated. There is no emotional baseline to relax into, so the body stays in a constant state of anticipation. Every text, every moment of attention feels amplified because it temporarily relieves the tension that has been building. This cycle trains the nervous system to associate emotional relief with that person, even though they are the source of the discomfort in the first place. The mind interprets this relief as connection, while the body becomes conditioned to crave the pattern. Over time, the relationship begins to feel magnetic, not because it is emotionally fulfilling, but because it keeps the nervous system engaged in a loop of stress and reward. This confusion is especially powerful for individuals who have learned, often early in life, that love is unpredictable. When affection was inconsistent or conditional, the nervous system adapted by staying alert, learning to scan for signs of approval or withdrawal. In adulthood, familiar emotional patterns feel safe, even when they are destabilizing. Calm, consistent emotional availability can feel unfamiliar or even boring because it does not activate the same physiological response. The absence of anxiety is mistaken for a lack of chemistry, while the presence of tension is mistaken for passion. The nervous system seeks what it recognizes, not what is healthy. Anxiety-driven attraction creates intensity without depth. The constant emotional vigilance narrows focus, making the other person feel unusually important. Thoughts become repetitive, emotions swing quickly, and the connection feels all-consuming. This intensity is often interpreted as evidence of a strong bond, yet it exists without mutual understanding or emotional closeness. Intimacy requires a sense of safety that allows the body to relax, while anxiety keeps the body braced for impact. When chemistry is built on nervous system activation rather than emotional attunement, the relationship becomes addictive rather than nourishing. The more the nervous system associates emotional spikes with attraction, the harder it becomes to recognize genuine connection. Calm interactions may feel flat, while chaotic ones feel alive. This distortion leads people to chase relationships that keep them emotionally unsettled, mistaking the rush of stress hormones for desire. Chemistry rooted in anxiety demands constant stimulation to sustain itself, while real connection grows in steadiness, presence, and emotional regulation. When the nervous system is no longer hijacked by unpredictability, attraction begins to align with emotional safety rather than emotional tension. Chasing becomes mistaken for connection when effort replaces reciprocity as the measure of emotional closeness. When one person is consistently pursuing attention, clarity, or reassurance, the mind begins to equate investment with intimacy. The more time, energy, and emotion poured into trying to reach someone, the more meaningful the relationship appears to feel. This creates a psychological trap where persistence is mistaken for bonding, even though true connection requires mutual engagement. The act of chasing keeps the focus on movement rather than depth, on pursuit rather than presence, creating the illusion that something significant is being built when, in reality, nothing is being shared. The process of chasing narrows emotional attention. Thoughts revolve around when the next response will come, what was meant by the last interaction, or how to behave to finally receive consistency. This constant mental occupation gives the impression of closeness because the other person feels central to one's inner world. However, being emotionally preoccupied with someone is not the same as being emotionally connected to them. Connection involves being known, understood, and responded to, while chasing involves guessing, adjusting, and waiting. The emotional labor required to maintain pursuit creates intensity, and intensity is often confused with intimacy. Chasing also feeds the belief that connection is something that must be earned. When emotional availability is inconsistent, the pursuing person may begin to interpret distance as a challenge rather than a boundary. Each small breakthrough, a text, a moment of warmth, a hint of vulnerability, feels like progress, reinforcing the idea that effort is paying off. These moments are magnified because they come after periods of absence, making them feel meaningful even when they offer no real emotional substance. The nervous system responds to the relief of being noticed, further strengthening the attachment, while overlooking the imbalance at the core of the dynamic. Over time, chasing shifts the emotional center of gravity away from mutuality and towards self-evaluation. The question becomes how to say the right thing, be less demanding, appear more attractive, or wait more patiently. The connection becomes conditional, dependent on performance rather than authenticity. In this state, emotional energy is spent managing the relationship rather than experiencing it. The illusion of connection deepens because the investment feels personal, as though giving more will eventually create closeness, when in reality, it only sustains the chase. Real connection does not require pursuit because it emerges from shared emotional presence. When both people are available, effort flows naturally in both directions, and interest does not need to be proven. Chasing fills the absence of reciprocity with motion, giving the appearance of progress while avoiding the discomfort of acknowledging emotional unavailability. The attachment grows not from shared experiences or understanding, but from the hope that persistence will transform distance into closeness. This is how movement replaces meaning, and pursuit is mistaken for connection. Childhood attachment patterns quietly run adult attraction because the nervous system learns what love feels like long before the mind can name it. Early emotional experiences create internal templates for connection, shaping expectations about closeness, safety, and availability. These templates operate beneath conscious awareness, influencing attraction not through logic but through familiarity. What feels right in adulthood is often what feels recognizable to the nervous system, even if it is destabilizing or painful. As a result, attraction is frequently guided not by emotional health, but by emotional memory. When care, attention, or affection were inconsistent in childhood, the nervous system adapted by becoming alert and vigilant. Love became associated with uncertainty, effort, and emotional tension. In adulthood, emotionally unavailable partners can trigger this same state, activating deep-seated patterns that feel familiar rather than foreign. The pull towards such dynamics is not random. It is rooted in a learned association between love and instability. Calm, emotionally available partners may feel unfamiliar or emotionally flat because they do not activate the same internal signals that once accompanied closeness. The absence of anxiety can be misinterpreted as a lack of attraction, even when safety and respect are present. Attachment patterns formed early also shape how individuals respond to emotional distance. Those who learned that connection required adaptation may unconsciously accept one-sided dynamics as normal. They may overfunction emotionally, take responsibility for maintaining closeness, or interpret withdrawal as a cue to try harder. These responses feel instinctive rather than chosen, driven by early conditioning rather than present reality. The attraction to emotionally distant partners is reinforced because the familiar struggle creates a sense of purpose, as if enduring uncertainty is part of what love requires. Even individuals who crave closeness may feel drawn to partners who cannot provide it because the nervous system equates emotional pursuit with bonding. The internal logic is not about happiness or fulfillment, but about resolution. There is often an unconscious hope that if this emotionally unavailable person can be made to stay, to open up, or to choose connection, it will rewrite the original emotional story. Attraction becomes tied to repair rather than reciprocity, with intimacy confused for the potential to heal old wounds through present relationships. These attachment-driven attractions are powerful because they operate below conscious intention. A person may intellectually desire emotional availability, consistency, and respect, yet feel little spark toward those who offer it. Meanwhile, emotionally distant individuals can evoke strong emotional responses with minimal effort. This disconnect between desire and attraction creates confusion, leading people to question their judgment or believe they are drawn to chemistry rather than conditioning. What is often labeled as fate or passion is the nervous system responding to a familiar emotional landscape. Attachment patterns do not dictate destiny, but they heavily influence initial attraction. Without awareness, individuals may repeatedly enter relationships that mirror early emotional experiences, mistaking familiarity for compatibility. The quiet power of attachment lies in its subtlety, shaping attraction without announcing its presence, guiding emotional choices long before conscious evaluation has a chance to intervene. Validation becomes the goal, not the relationship, when emotional connection is replaced by the need to be chosen, approved of, or deemed worthy by another person. In these dynamics, the focus slowly shifts away from mutual understanding and shared emotional presence toward external confirmation of self-worth. Attention, affection, or recognition from the other person begins to carry disproportionate meaning, not because it deepens intimacy, but because it temporarily soothes internal insecurity. The relationship stops being about who the two people are together and becomes about what one person's response says about the other's value. This shift often happens in emotionally unbalanced connections where affection is inconsistent or conditional. When validation is scarce, it becomes precious. Small gestures of interest feel significant, and emotional crumbs are interpreted as proof of connection. The nervous system begins to associate relief with being noticed, reinforcing the desire to seek more validation rather than question the imbalance. Instead of asking whether the relationship is emotionally fulfilling, the focus becomes whether one is attractive enough, patient enough, or worthy enough to receive consistent attention. The relationship becomes a mirror for self-assessment rather than a space for mutual growth. As validation takes center stage, authenticity quietly erodes. Behavior becomes shaped by anticipation of approval rather than genuine expression. Words are carefully chosen, needs are minimized, and boundaries are softened in an effort to remain desirable. Emotional honesty feels risky because it might disrupt the fragile sense of being accepted. This creates a performance-based connection where being liked takes precedence over being known. The illusion of closeness deepens because effort is being made, yet the emotional self remains unseen, further reinforcing the craving for validation. Over time, the pursuit of validation can create emotional dependency. The other person's reactions begin to regulate mood and self perception. A moment of warmth brings relief and hope, while distance triggers self doubt and anxiety. This emotional volatility strengthens attachment, making the relationship feel intense and meaningful, even as it lacks true reciprocity. The need for validation keeps the bond intact, not because the relationship is nourishing, but because it has become tied to identity and self esteem. When validation replaces relationship, power subtly shifts. The person offering approval holds emotional influence, while the one seeking it becomes increasingly invested. This imbalance makes it difficult to step back and assess whether the connection is healthy. The fear of losing validation can outweigh the desire for emotional safety, leading to tolerance of distance, inconsistency, or unmet needs. What feels like love is often the relief of being seen, even briefly, rather than the comfort of being consistently valued. A relationship rooted in validation seeking lacks the foundation needed for intimacy. Intimacy requires mutual recognition, emotional risk from both sides, and the freedom to be fully oneself. When validation is the primary goal, connection remains conditional and fragile, sustained by hope rather than shared emotional reality. True attraction feels calm, not chaotic, because it is rooted in emotional safety rather than emotional volatility. When attraction is grounded in security, the nervous system does not need to remain on high alert. There is no constant scanning for signs of rejection, no obsession over mixed signals, no urgency to decode silence. Calm attraction allows the body to settle, creating space for presence and clarity. This steadiness is often misunderstood because it lacks the dramatic intensity that many have learned to associate with romance, yet it is precisely this absence of chaos that signals emotional alignment. Chaotic attraction thrives on unpredictability, where emotional highs are followed by sudden lows. The nervous system becomes accustomed to spikes of adrenaline and cortisol, mistaking this arousal for passion. Calm attraction, by contrast, does not rely on emotional roller coasters to feel alive. It is experienced as consistency, openness, and mutual responsiveness. Instead of triggering anxiety, it creates a sense of ease. Conversations flow without calculation. Affection is not rationed, and interest does not need to be proven. The connection feels spacious rather than consuming, allowing individuals to remain grounded within themselves while engaging with another. Because many people equate intensity with importance, calm attraction can initially feel underwhelming. Without emotional tension, the mind may search for something missing, interpreting peace as a lack of chemistry. This misinterpretation is often the result of prior conditioning, where love was associated with uncertainty or emotional effort. In such cases, calm does not feel exciting because it does not activate survival-based attachment patterns. Yet true attraction does not destabilize. It supports emotional regulation. It allows curiosity to grow without fear and closeness to develop without resistance. In calm attraction, interest is expressed directly rather than indirectly. There is no need to withhold affection to maintain power or create desire. Mutual availability removes the need for chasing or guessing, replacing it with clarity and trust. This transparency may feel unfamiliar to those accustomed to ambiguity, but it is the foundation of genuine connection. Emotional presence creates resonance not through suspense, but through attunement. The nervous system recognizes this alignment as safety, which allows attraction to deepen rather than spike and crash. True attraction also preserves individuality. Chaos often pulls focus inward, creating preoccupation and emotional dependency. Calm attraction, on the other hand, expands emotional capacity. It supports autonomy while fostering closeness, allowing both people to remain connected to themselves as well as each other. There is room for vulnerability without fear of abandonment, and space for growth without emotional withdrawal. This balance creates a sense of grounded desire, where attraction is sustained by shared reality rather than emotional turbulence. When attraction is calm, it does not demand constant reassurance to survive. It is reinforced through consistency rather than intensity, through reliability rather than drama. The bond strengthens quietly, built on mutual understanding and emotional availability. What feels less overwhelming is often more enduring, and what feels peaceful is often more real. When all of this is seen together, a clear pattern emerges. What many people call attraction is often the nervous system responding to familiarity, not emotional truth. Emotional absence creates illusion. Anxiety disguises itself as chemistry. Chasing mimics connection. Old attachment wounds steer desire. Validation replaces intimacy. And chaos gets mistaken for passion. None of these lead to real closeness, yet they can feel powerful because they activate survival-based patterns that once kept connection alive, even at a cost. True emotional attraction does not demand confusion, self-abandonment, or emotional endurance. It does not require proving worth, decoding silence, or tolerating inconsistency. Real attraction feels grounded because it is built on mutual presence, not emotional tension. It allows the nervous system to rest, the mind to feel clear, and the self to remain intact. What feels calm is not lacking depth. It is free of drama. When awareness replaces autopilot, attraction begins to change. What once felt exciting may start to feel exhausting, and what once felt boring may reveal itself as safe, stable, and emotionally real. Growth in relationships is not about learning how to be chosen by emotionally distant people, but about learning to choose connections that do not require emotional struggle to exist.